truth, go to
Darkcity Radio.
Tonight we've got Marc Stevens on for the first hour, then we'll have Vin James from the No State Project, and we'll be taking calls on the second hour. Marc Stevens is an author of Adventures in Legal Land. He's been looking into the legal system and the corruption behind it for many, many years. And we might as well get straight to it. Hi, Marc.
Well, hi, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
No, this is definitely my pleasure indeed. So your Adventures in Legal Land is all about legal adventures, what it says on the tin, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what I learned from personal first-hand experience by engaging the legal system. Adventures was after, I guess, maybe 5-6 years of direct experience with the legal system all over the U.S. And now with the new book, it's much broader in scope, but they're all real examples of my experiences, good and bad, or indifferent, with the legal system.
And I guess you've had many experiences with the legal system over the year, doing what you're doing and the position you've got to now. Like, you are literally world famous for doing this.
I don't know about world famous, but I do appreciate the opportunity to work with people outside of North America. We you mentioned a mate, Vin James, is going to be on next. He's had success, and he's a tremendous resource in England. Just what he was able to. I just get tickled pink. I thought it was great going through his transcript when he really just tore up a magistrate, Recorder Downey was her name, and it just, to me, it's just been really a neat experience to be able to work with people like Vin and like Keith in Melbourne, and have people be able to stand up for themselves and replicate the experiences or the results that I've had here.
Do you actually find that the legal system and the procedures behind it is completely different or similar to the States, to the UK?
Well, some of the verbiage is different, and I've noticed that the less I focus on the standard procedure that may be set out in their books, that the more success I tend to have. I just go into it now. Like I did a property tax issue this morning with a client in Toronto, and I've never read these provincial legislation that they talk about, and so I go into it without any real expectation other than we've got a problem. Mr. X is making accusations against my client. I just want to know that the evidence it's based on, and that's really so. I don't get into all the Minister of Finance and start worrying about the labels, and it just seems to be when we bring things down to a human level like that, it's just Mark talking to, what was the guy's name? It's Mark and Brian. It makes it a lot more effective. It's easier to work with, and we get much better results. I've never, I'm not familiar enough with Canadian law to say I'm any kind of expert or I have any working knowledge of it. But I am able to get them to admit that there's no evidence that there's jurisdiction over my client. That I can do. And I think it's easier to do that when we're not focusing on all that legal stuff.
So what do you mean they can't get evidence over jurisdiction over your client?
Well, the basis for here, we use this, the Canadian one as an example, because I just did this a couple of hours ago. The basis of the attack is property taxes. The foundation of the attack, of course, is violence. They do this or we will punish you. But to cover that violence up, they're using what they call the provincial legislation. I guess that's because the area, the land, is supposedly located in what the political province known as Ontario. And so because that's their jurisdiction is based on that code. I know that because they've told me and it'll be in their paperwork. And so that's where I focus my collateral attack, if you will, my questioning or my cross-examination, which I think is more proper, even though we're not in court. So if their entire basis of jurisdiction, even send my client a letter, has to do with the provincial legislation, then I want to know what evidence they have that applies to my client.
No, because I was listening to your interview with the IRS, Miss Clark. Do you remember that one? Where you was asking her for proof of the income tax. Is it applicable to him? And You was running rings around her about it, and she didn't know where to put herself half the time.
Well, and I get her to make you. In my experience, look, I know through investigation and talking with these agents every single day, and just looking at things as close to the way they are, that they're claiming a 200-year-old piece of paper applies to my client somehow, but there's no evidence of that. So it's easy to see that if you understand the Constitution or the Code is just the ramblings of the insane, or just it's just writing on a piece of paper. That's literally what it is. You'd have to be insane to disagree with that. You're obviously disconnected from reality, which most bureaucrats are. If that's our starting point, then it's very easy to take their public relations, which is that the code applies and the Constitution is this, that, and the other thing, and to bind them into an untenable position where they have to either admit that there's no evidence or fail to give it to you. Either way, that's pretty bad against them. And so with Kimberly Clark, all I had to do was ask if there was a factual difference between income and taxable income. So it's not an issue of law. It's an issue of fact. And that's where I got her, because there is no factual difference. All it comes down to is somebody said it was different. Their say so. Oh, well, the Constitution said so. So by getting her to admit to an untenable position that there's a factual difference between income and taxable income, she couldn't go any further. That's why she said to me, if you remember the call, she said, well, you can go read the code like anybody else. No, I'm asking you for the facts. The code is an issue of law. That's an issue of opinion. And you'll find the more you stick to the facts, you'll find that they will always try to conflate or confuse issues of fact with issues of law, because they'll always defeat you on issues of law.
Yeah, so talking about the Constitution, like in this country, you've got groups of people that are tied and linked to the freeman movement, and that they try and fight for a British Constitution because it's not codified over here. And what do you think that would make?
Well, one, I would dispute the assertion that there was a country. That would be, there is no country. And that's one of the things that really hurts the freemen, because they're starting from a faulty foundation. The whole idea of a freeman on a land, that there was once a de jure government or state or a country, there's just no evidence of that. It's just like anywhere else. It's just it's an idea, it's a fiction to get people to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of tribe, and to continue paying taxes. I would look at as far as if someone's claiming the Constitution, or like when I do work in England, which we did yesterday with Paul in Sheffield, I asked someone at CPS. For those who don't know, that's the Crown Prosecutor Service. I asked this police officer, what evidence do you have that the acts of Parliament actually apply to my client? And after a little bit of some circular logic, which I pointed out, at least the man was honest enough to say, this is a direct quote, I have absolutely no idea. So it just gets back, Dom, that I think it's better to just don't make an assertion about a certain law or a certain this or that. Just ask for the facts that the law that they are using, here it's CPS, the law that they're using to justify their attack, because it'll collapse every single time. Because otherwise, I think you're taking upon an unnecessary burden of proof upon yourself, because I don't think that anybody, and they're free to come on my show anytime and prove that there is such a thing as a country.
Well, I totally agree with you with the Constitution basically being nothing more than a contract signed by a bunch of men that are dead, that signed it, don't know when, hundreds of years ago. Look at the Magna Carta, signed hundreds of years ago, and Bill of Rights. It's like nothing to do with us. This is the rules that they made and the rights that they made up, and that they expect us to play their game and don't tell us the rules or how to play it.
But why even give them as much as you did by saying it was a contract? Is it? I don't think that anybody could rationally make any case really that the Magna Carta was a contract. I mean, from what history records, it's and I quote, and I have this in the new book. It's basically the Baron said to John, "Sign this, or we'll lop your head off."
So it's then again he did sign it, but it's still under
Okay.
threat and force.
Right. So just like with the Constitution here or the Constitution in China, because China has a constitution too. I mean, most most states or countries they have that public relations. The idea that it is a contract, there's no evidence to that, and that's why everything goes down to what does the evidence tell us. So if we look at the U.S. Constitution or even the let's say the Magna Carta, we have four factual elements that would be necessary to support an opinion that something was a contract, and you have to have an offer, a meeting of the minds, a freely given consent, and then a valid consideration. And none of that is there when you look at the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is just a document that was drafted by a bunch of lunatics in 1215 and coerced some other lunatic named John to sign. It has absolutely no factual connection to anybody living today.
So
Hell, they couldn't even have held John to it. They couldn't have even have held John to that as a contract.
see, I looked into all this freemanisms and all the rest of it whilst I was studying law, and went out there and tested a lot of it out, and most of it will come round and bite yourself back on the arse, is the way I see it. I've tried out many times with the freeman sort of stuff, affidavits and notices of intent, and when you look deeper into the legal situation and how the procedure of the courts go, how honourable a freeman document might sound to people, it's not actually following the court's procedure or administration rules, and it's not applicable. So that's why it's mostly thrown out of court, is the way I've seen it. And with yourself, am I right in saying that you act as a client or act for your clients as a power of attorney?
Yeah. Yes. When in like the Canadian one this morning, the client had sent in a power of attorney, and that was not a problem. But it's not in court. So generally, yes, with a power of attorney, or like what I'm doing with Paul with the Sheffield Police, Paul's on the line with me, and he authorizes them to speak to me. And it's 99% of the time there's not an issue. I get to do all the talking and get the admissions that there's no evidence that I need.
Is there for a power of attorney, like you can do that over the phone just by saying that you're a power of attorney, but if you went to court, is there a certain process or procedure where you have to serve forms and get the consent of the other parties to say that you are the power of attorney? And do they accept that?
Yeah, I have. When I go to court, and the last time I did this, I was in the federal court on an IRS dispute where they wanted to enforce a summons on not a complaint, but a request for relief, or a prayer for relief, which is a prayer for relief for anyone who's ever been to court knows is not a complaint. But that's what they get away with anyway. And so I went in and I was able to, I don't know what the word is, but finesse my way into actually speaking on behalf of somebody in federal court without being a lawyer. It just comes down to if the judge allows it, and if the judge allows it, it's not the unauthorized practice of law. And but generally, I can just say that I'm an ex-friend or I'm just assisting, and most of the time they let me. But then you're going to have some psychopaths like in California where they'll call in the army and do everything they can to keep me from going in front of the bar, which it's ridiculous.
And you're not actually saying to people that this is the silver bullet. You're just trying to get reduction on what you're seeing is the case as such. Is in most cases, is that right?
Right. I am a very skeptical person by nature, and I don't want anyone to have the idea. And I've gone to great lengths on the show and even in the first book that it's about damage control. Once they set their sights on you, you lost. We can minimize the damage by getting some leverage on them, by having them, asking them. All we're doing is challenging their assertions. We don't assume anything. We just take what this guy, whoever it is, property tax or CPS or, drug possession, whatever it happens to be, we're taking their accusations, and all we want them to do is verify it. I mean, it boils down to like the scientific method, if you will. You're just asking questions, and you're going from the general statement that the bureaucrat has, and you're asking questions to have them be more and more specific. And it's really all there is to it. The only difference between what I do And what a good lawyer would do is, and I mean a good lawyer, I mean someone who actually questions and is aggressive, is that I do not accept any sacred cows. So, like Martin Jenkins was a lawyer for the Labor Department in New Hampshire, a state agency. And when I was questioning, a lawyer would not ask him for facts that the code applied. That's just not something, that's a sacred cow. They do not challenge, or like they're in England, they're not generally going to challenge the applicability of an act of parliament. It just seems, so you get this nonsense that, like Martin Jenkins said, well, the law is universal, it applies to everybody. Oh, really? And I'm sure if the Chinese government said that you owed income tax, you would just pay it because the law. So in a nutshell, you're questioning them on the accusations, and you want the foundation, you want the evidence, and you want to know if there are any witnesses with personal first-hand knowledge to establish that, because that is using their own system against them. You're just questioning.
See, there was a thing that you talk about with the conflict of interest and how to put it across to the courtroom. Like if you was brought to court and you state to them, like, well, do I get a fair trial? And of course they would say yeah. And if there was a conflict of interest, there couldn't be a fair trial, and how to actually put that across to them. Because over here with a magistrate's court, you don't have a jury. You just have a hearing. And then, like, if you're going to go to trial, a fair trial, this is what I was trying to look up today, and I was looking in and out of all the legal ramblings of it. And a fair trial, it more means along the lines of impartial will be the jury. They're not connected to the Crown, so it'll be them that makes the decision.
Well, that they use that to mislead you, because remember, the judge, even if we have, let's say, for sake of argument, we have an actual fair and impartial jury. You're able to do that, which I don't think you can do. But we're just discussing it. The judge is still the gatekeeper with everything at pretrial and everything that happens at trial, because the jury is not going to hear any evidence or lack of evidence that the judge does not want them to hear. And the judge is going to be the one giving instructions to the jury, which are criminal. In Mike's, we had a tax evasion one where he was charged with a code violation. He was not permitted by the judge, the gatekeeper, to raise the issue of the applicability of the very code he was charged with violating. And he charged the jury, telling them that the law was applicable, even though there was not one shred of evidence presented, and there were no witnesses with personal knowledge to support that. So it's no excuse or justification to say, well, mate, the jury's the one making the decision. Yeah, based on what the judge allows them to see.
Yeah, because I've witnessed this myself recently, and within the case, even if this is what the prosecution put up against the defence was the definition of dishonest. And within the definition of dishonest, it doesn't matter how honest and honourable and factual you are being yourself. If the rest of society would see it to be dishonest, then like it is. Much like Robin Hood, and it even quotes Robin Hood in it, and says, well, even though you're taking from the rich to give to the poor, the rest of society would still see that as theft, so therefore it's dishonest. So they always like got all these twists and turns, and I've seen it myself. Very hard game to play at times.
Well, that's because you're accepting a non-responsive answer. I mean, if you're going in and, like I said this morning, this is an issue of fact, sir. This is not an issue of law. I don't want to go to your website because I'm not interested in issues of law. And that's kind of what you're getting there. When somebody says, well, the rest of society, you have no objection. Speculation. I mean, come on, you, sir, give me some evidence. Don't speculate on what you think the rest of society thinks. I mean, that's such gross speculation, something like that. And even though they may just they may overrule that and they may go, keep going forward, you've made your point. And it is, you need to point those things out. That's why I recommend that you're constantly objecting, because almost every word out of their mouth is going to be non-responsive, or it's going to be irrelevant, or it's going to be a flat-out lie.
Somebody's just put a question into the chat room. Even a jury is full of citizens of the state.
Say that again?
Even a jury is full of citizens of the state. So it's like that they are still essentially working for the state as such.
Well,
Even
they're
though
being
it's,
paid, yeah, and they're being
yeah.
paid as jurors by the very system that's attacking you, and that's why I mentioned before. You can't see a fair, impartial, independent jury. It's impossible. Not under. It's just like it's not possible. It's just, and so I agree. Now, that's not even taking into consideration how many government employees may be on there. How many of these people on the jury rely on government handouts or a government program or a government contract?
So, what is your when you go to court with this sort of procedure and process? And I wouldn't call it fighting or battling the system because that's the last sort of words I'd want to use. But statistically wise, what's the success rate you've been having with this?
Well, with traffic tickets, 75% of the time we file the motion and send a motion to dismiss that there's no evidence of jurisdiction, and there's no case or controversy, and it's not adversarial. When we always give a copy to the police officer who wrote the ticket. Well, 75% of the time, he doesn't even show up and the ticket gets thrown out. And so you can see examples of that on the website, and I have the documentation for that. Now, I know these people say, well, Mark, you're just speculating. You have no direct evidence to say that he didn't show up because it had anything to do with the motion. Well, we have had reports where the cop was there for other trials. He just wasn't coming in for hours. So that is direct evidence. And then we have also the fact that the cop is blowing off a subpoena and he's not being charged with a failure to appear, which in a lot of places like California, if you don't show up on a court date, you get charged with a misdemeanor failure to appear. So that, and why would they blow it off if the motion had no merit? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, even when the motion is rejected, they still don't show up. So why would they blow off a subpoena over time to not show up at what should be a slam dunk trial where the judge has already rejected your entire position? It doesn't make any sense.
See, and then also, what if, I don't know if it's the same over there as it is over here, but if somebody parks up outside a row of shops and then a camera catches them on a photo and it's done like near enough automated and sent to the registered keeper's house, and
Right.
you've got a penalty charge notice. Would you deal with that in much the same way?
Yeah, I believe that's it's very similar. It was a photo ticket that we're challenging and defending against in Sheffield. And I did just the same thing. The Sheffield police or whoever is issuing that ticket is powerless they do not, at least at this point, do not impose the fine and come after you. That is the court. They have to go to the court first. So they still have it set up in most places where you have to go to court. And the court has to have jurisdiction. Well, the jurisdiction of the court is limited to a case or controversy, of a violation of an act of parliament or the Constitution, and it's limited to only a case of controversy involving the country's law. I'll just say country for sake of argument, and. So this is so it's very important and it's necessary for who's ever bringing a complaint, because the burden of jurisdiction relies on the one who moves the court and files the complaint. They have to show evidence, at least some prima facie showing that the code applies to you, so that the court can take jurisdiction. So I do it no different. Jurisdiction is really the be all end all of it, and because it hinges on their code, and the code doesn't apply to anyone. There's no evidence. That's why it's really the foremost focus. And they'll tell you point blank. I mean, I know I got into a row with this guy this morning. He didn't want to admit it. He thought I was getting silly because he said there was nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do to stop the assessment. I said, so you're telling me in plain English that even though there's no evidence of jurisdiction, part of your job is to proceed absent jurisdiction? Well, now you're just getting silly. No. I'm just pointing out your silliness. You're telling me there's nothing you can do, and you have evidence that there's no jurisdiction, but there's nothing you can do. I need you to explain that to me. I'm American, so I need things dumbed down to a certain point.
Well, that's the thing. They do say things like, well, now you're just going around in circles. Well,
That's exactly what he said, and I had to point out to him the only reason why we're going in a circle is because you are engaged in circular logic. So this is what I actually asked him this. You always want to do your logical check. You want to make sure that there's a meeting of the minds here, that you and I were talking about the same thing. So when I get these really stupid statements, I want to make sure that I'm quoting them properly. So I'll get them to confirm this, and I want to write this down. Let me see if I got you straight. This happened just this morning. Again, this is out of Canada. His name was Brian. And let me get this. Let me understand you here, Brian. You're telling me that the code applies because the code said so. He says, that's right. Wow. So that's why we're going around in a circle. I'm asking for facts. You're giving me opinions, and you're using circular logic. But they project that onto you as if you or I are the problem. No. Answer me like an adult, and we can move on.
see, I think this is a big thing where people get really confused over what a belief is and what a knowing is. When you know something, it's for real, but a belief is something that doesn't even exist.
Well, you want to separate the fact from the opinion. I look at it that way, where a fact is something that can be proven by empirical evidence and an opinion cannot. And that's really, in a nutshell. An opinion is what is drawn from empirical facts that can be proven. So
their claims have to be based upon facts, and they have to be able to prove these claims with them same said facts. So anyone that can't prove their claims, obviously they have to throw it out of court, surely.
Right, and my objective is, as I'm sure everyone would agree, is to get it dropped as soon as possible, to get this thing taken care of before it gets to court. But yes, when it's in court, we want to get it thrown out at the arraignment or at the pretrial before it goes any further. And the idea that they have to prove, well, that's just basic common sense. I mean, the one who makes the allegation is the one who bears the burden of proof. I mean, I asked them if there's a doubt to that. So they'll say to you, let's say, for example, this is a real thing that you'll go through. If you caught one of these people and asked them, "Boy, what facts do you have that the acts of Parliament, just in general, the acts of Parliament apply to me at all?" And they'll, what evidence do you have that they don't? I don't have any evidence at all that they apply. That's the point. They turn it around on you. I said, no. And I'll say, sir, you do know as a lawyer or just as an adult, you know that the one who makes the allegation bears the burden of proof. You're the one or your witness is the one making the allegation. You bear the burden of proof, not me. So let's get back to the issue. What facts do you have?
Also, a question that's come up a couple of times in the room is about jurisdiction. What is jurisdiction?
Well, it depends. It depends on who you're asking. If you're asking me, I know from a factual standpoint, all it is the violent domination of one man or one man by another. That's what. If you strip out all the legalese and just look at the facts, look at a traffic stop, look at court, the judge taking violent control over your life and property, and it has nothing to do with your consent. But the public relations is different, and that's where what I do is, and all I'm doing really is by asking the questions, I'm showing that their PR, their allegations, their claims are in contradiction to the actual facts, like the judge being a fair, impartial, independent decision maker, even though they got an oath to the crown. It's just nonsense. Vin did a great job with that. So it's the same thing here. With any issue, you're bringing that out. You're bringing that apparent contradiction in, by asking some questions. So whatever it happens to be. So the example you gave me was again
about jurisdiction. What is jurisdiction? Was the question?
Right. They're going to believe that their jurisdiction is their power or authority to hear a case. And that's really what it comes down to. So if you're talking about a court, it's the power of a court to, to hear a particular controversy before it.
Yeah. So it's basically what they're claiming to have this authority to deal with the matter with you in regards, and they've got to prove simply where they get that, or where their authority comes from, or where their claim comes from, that any of that actually applies to you.
Show me the facts. I had someone in New Hampshire tell me, he says, look, this is not a matter of discussion, sir. Your client either does A or he suffers severe consequences. So I said, so basically, my client doesn't have a choice. You're doing business at, you're doing, your business at the, with a gun. That's it's just, well, has power ever come from anything else? You're telling me that your power, your jurisdiction is a gun? He says, yes. Does power come from anything else, sir? I said, well, I'm certainly glad to hear some honesty that you're actually admitting to being nothing more than a criminal organization. He didn't like the characterization of being a criminal organization, but that's when you strip out the PR and you just look at the facts. How, where, when, why, and how did you acquire? What facts do you rely on to show that you have jurisdiction over me? Their job is to cover up the violence. My job is to make that impossible. So what it comes down to is most of them do not want to admit that it's just brute violence. Well, we've got this code over here, and you live in the UK, and that's just the way it is. And no, I'm not a child anymore. I want the evidence, and they tend not to. And it's a good thing too, though. We're still at a point where they do not want to just admit naked aggression. They don't want. So because they have to make it look good, or they still follow that model, we're able to bring up that there is no evidence, and they don't want to show that it's just sheer violence, and they usually back off.
So it's a very good point as well, because when you look at the speed limits around the country in the UK, you've got road signs 30, 40 miles an hour, 50. But when you get onto the motorway, there's no road signs saying how fast you're allowed to go. And if you're not from this country, like if you're from Germany, for example, in the Autobahn over there, the motorways are limitless for speed as long as you're driving safely. So how are people supposed to know the codes and rules of another?
That's one of the things where it used to be that you had the old saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse, because once upon a time it used to be a lot less complicated when it came to laws other than pay the king or die. It had to do with I think it was Blackstone quoting another psychopath. Well, no, not Blackstone wasn't a psychopath, but he was quoting a psychopath, Justinian, who certainly was a psychopath. That the three precepts of the law are injure no one, give every man his due, and injure no one. Yeah, injure no one, give every man his due, and I'm drawing a what the. You got me on that, but that's basically what it is. Don't injure anyone. Live honestly. That's it. Live honestly, injure no one, give every man his due. Oh, had an American moment there. And so there, where it's basically something a 5-year-old could understand, it was ignorance of the law is no excuse, because it's easy, by the time you're 5 to live honestly, injure no one, and give every man his due. But now what you're talking about, where you've got millions and millions of pages of codes and regulations, it's impossible. Even if they did apply, how could you possibly know them?
Now, I know there's something that you've tried out, and there's many people in this country that are trying out the freeman sort of process of driving or deregistering their cars and driving it around with no plates and things like that, with notices of intent in their car ready to hand over to the police. And even though the process has failed 99.999% of the time, people still promote this process. But you've had your own experiences taking plates off of the car and driving around.
Yes, and that's where I got a lot of the experience that I write about in Adventures in Legal Land, and it was good to learn. It's not something that I recommend people doing. I would prefer to, especially when people are new, you want to minimize the risk, which is why I have, for example, the parking ticket study, where you can challenge this, the systems, the concepts of the system. You can challenge these people, and the risk is very low. And I think there's a very high risk to taking a plate off the car and risking being tased or shot on the side of the street. It's just to me, it's just too dangerous. I wouldn't do it. I applaud acts of civil disobedience, and if people understand the risk involved, and they're an adult and they understand that and they take that risk, great, more power to you, and good luck. It's just not non-compliance or civil disobedience that I am comfortable engaging in anymore. Couldn't
theoretically or hypothetically, let's say somebody got a parking ticket and it's £100, whatever it is.
Wow.
They
Oh, crap.
well, in fact, that's what it is over here. It's £100, and then they give you an offer. Check this out. They tell you it's £100, so they've got you there first thing. But then, if you pay it within a certain amount of time, they'll half it. How kind is
Yeah,
that?
that's very, very common. It's not quite as high here, and I think I'm doing the conversion correctly. £100 that's a lot for a parking ticket. I mean, out here it'll be like 38 American, and
Okay.
if you pay it right away, but it'll go up to 56 or 75 if you don't. That's very common. It's no different than if you get a drug possession. They'll say, look, if you just cop a deal and sign away all this money and all this drugs, we'll get you out of here, no problem. But if you fight this, we're going to have to add charges, and we're going to have to go really dig our heels in, and we have to go after you hardcore. I'm like, do you have any evidence?
See, like I'm totally with you, and if I ever got done for a parking offence, well, I could have fun in court playing with it. But there are people that do sort of know this stuff, but they don't want to try it out. And on a car, let's go back to the £100. Now, if that did go to court and then they didn't pay the £100 to get extra money on top of that, and then if they didn't pay that, and they, the courts over here, it's not always 100%. They could actually still go to prison trying this sort of process out, could they not?
Prison, I don't know about prison, but they certainly could spend some time in jail on a contempt charge. I know that's how they get around the whole debtor's prison prohibition out here. They just charge you with contempt. If they want you in jail, they're going to get you in jail. You are dealing with psychopaths. And I just want to point out, and someone thought I was being flippant about using the word psychopath. And I do that, and I do not take that lightly. And I believe that with all the experience that I have, knowing that the majority of these people, certainly the ones that I've spoken to when I label them a psychopath, they are callous, they are lacking in empathy, they have a huge, massive ego, and they are pathological liars. Or let's just say they are incessant liars. So that's what I mean when I say psychopath. I do not mean it in a flippant way. But with the parking ticket, if you have the opportunity, if you're in an area of England where you do have an opportunity to go to court, I certainly believe that you can really give the Crown solicitor a run for their money when it comes to evidence, because we've done it before. It's we've done it in fact, Vin, I think it was Vin, actually had a parking ticket thrown out. We do have Vin, mate. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you with somebody else, but we do have documentation on the website. I did a short video with Vin about it. And so you can see the documentation that a parking ticket was withdrawn, or that it was kicked out. So I do encourage, if you get a parking ticket, to definitely question them on the facts, the evidence that they have, that the acts of Parliament or the local regulation applies at all.
Yeah, there's a group over here as well called Get Out of Debt Free, and they've got a process of sending template letters off to ask them to prove their claims, and they have a high success rate too of just not being able for them to prove their parking tickets. Even the host of the show, Paul, he's just won a £360 parking ticket. So there's many people that are getting a lot of successes out of these. Well, how would you explain it yourself? Because I can't see it any more than covert corporate slavery.
I think it's very easy to understand what's going on if you take the label corporate or government, private, and public. If you take that out and you just look at them as people, if you just go based on what the empirical evidence tells you, and don't impose your own prejudgments and whatnot on the situation, you're just dealing with people. And so they're claiming that their code applies. And so I had to explain this to someone in California yesterday. So let me, maybe you're not understanding me. I said, you're saying a code applies to my client. Well, I have my own code, let's say. And I'm saying, and in my code, it says that you have to pay me 30% of your salary every quarter. Now, are you going to just pay me, or are you going to question how my code applies to you? He said, well, of course your code doesn't apply to me. Bingo. There you go. And I think when you at least in my experience, can prove this and can bear this out. When you just treat them as people and you don't accept the titles and all the other pomp and circumstance that may come with that, especially, being in England, it makes it a lot easier to resolve the problem that you may have with them, because it's just Bert making a claim against you. It's not the Crown or, they say, you can't fight City Hall. Yeah, but you can question Bert. Yeah. And Bert probably doesn't have a clue as to what in the world he's talking about. And I'm very confident if you just stick with the facts, we've replicated this regardless of the physical location. It doesn't matter. This goes beyond all politics. It goes beyond all procedure, whatever. You just question them as individual men and women, and don't get into the corporate, because I think even the corporate part of it clouds things. It's not a corporation. It's Bert.
Yeah. And also, like with titles and labels and things like that, what is a citizen and a resident?
Well, a citizen is supposed to be a member of the body politic, owing a duty of allegiance in return for duty of protection, that these are reciprocal obligations. Now, that's not my opinion. That's the U.S. Supreme Court. And that goes back. Blackstone talked about that, and Locke talked about that. I mean, this goes way beyond the 1689 Bill of Rights and way beyond. I mean, it has to do from Rome and beyond, where it had to do with, well, we give you, so you're born in the protection of the king, and you shall pay him allegiance and a tax, or he will kill you. And so resident is similar to the citizen. The difference being a resident is not necessarily a member of the body politic, but the opinion is that they do owe allegiance in return for protection, and that they have to pay taxes. And both of them are fictions, complete and utter fictions in the modern sense of the words citizen and resident.
And also, a lot of times, like when you've gone to court yourself, they say that your arguments are frivolous.
Yes.
Can you go into detail a bit on that?
Sure. I point out one common response that I have is, "Excuse me, who are you talking to? Who are you responding to?" And it kind of jars them away. You? No, I didn't raise an argument. I'm just asking you questions. And it floors them. Well, it's leading to a frivolous argument. Oh, do I have to say objection, speculation? No, come on. Stop trying to read my mind. Either you have the evidence or you don't. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, I'm here in good faith to resolve this. And my question is not my argument. Do you have evidence? And even if I give them, like the other day, and I do quote the argument clinic from Monty Python and say, no. An argument is a collected series of statements leading to a different proposition. But if I give them a pass and I say, look, if I am presenting an argument, it is only this. You don't have any facts that the Constitution and Code apply. Now, if you think that's frivolous, that's fine. You still have to tell me what facts you rely on, if any. And that's how I handle that. And this is why I continually press people and encourage them, do not take a position unless the position keeps the burden of proof on them. Okay, it's always just asking questions because we know they're going to say this is a frivolous argument. So, I mean, I just had the other day where a woman from the IRS hung up yelling at me. She says, I'm not going to argue or debate the law with you. Bang, and she hangs up the phone. I just asked you what evidence. That's not an argument, and it certainly isn't a debate.
So, with playing the role of power of attorney, is that going to be much the same over here with the No State project that's going on in the UK? Are they going to be able to act as power of attorney for other people as clients?
I missed the last part.
Basically, the No State Project UK side of it, are they going to be able to act as attorney, power of attorney, for clients over here?
Well, I believe they can. You don't necessarily always need the power of attorney, but because in my experience, what it boils down to is the psychopath, the gatekeeper, whether it's a judge or an administrative law officer or you're just dealing administratively with the agent who's making the accusation. What it comes down to ultimately is it doesn't matter what the law says. What it comes down to is how willing they are to engage you in a good faith effort to resolve the problem. So the POA is usually not a problem. I mean, I've mentioned so far I have had no issues of not having a power of attorney in writing outside of North America. So I've done it many times in Australia, and I've done it many times with clients in England. And in neither situation have I even bothered with a written power of attorney. It's just I'm there, the client authorizes it, or we just start talking and engaging the issues, and it doesn't even come up. So I don't think you know, if you're in court, that's different. When you're in court,
no, that's what I meant. Like in court,
I'm sorry.
If the client had to authorize it, is there a set procedure for the client to do? Like, let's say I had a friend and they just couldn't deal with it in court, so they wanted me to turn up as a power of attorney. What would myself and he have to do?
Yeah, all I do is when I've done power of attorneys, and I know they don't like when I do this. And the IRS, Paul Webb is an example who did this. He didn't like my power of attorney because all we did was it was a contract, an actual contract between the client and myself, where they were authorizing me. We were agreeing that for certain purposes, very limited purposes, I was going to speak on their behalf in their interest with the IRS. And we had signed it with a choice of law clause that specifically excluded the laws of the United States. And the Paul Webb, who was the district counsel for the IRS, he says, we can't accept this power of attorney. Why? It's not a real power of attorney. Why not? So walk me through this here, Paul. And again, we're going from general to specific, which is always what you want to do with these psychopaths. I said, a power of attorney is what? It's an agreement between two people so that one is authorized to speak on the other behalf. He says, yeah. I said, well, does my power of attorney do that? Yeah. Well, then what's the problem? We don't like that you specifically excluded the United States government and laws from your power of attorney. It's not between you. But it's not. It doesn't involve you. It only authorizes me to speak to you. It doesn't. The power of attorney is not with you. What's wrong with you? You know, do I really have to explain this to an adult with an advanced university degree? Really? And I'm the schmuck.
Well, that's the thing, that they probably sitting up there in their big chair, thinking they're above everyone else. And I don't think we were supposed to know this sort of stuff. We were supposed to have the blinkers on. And I think there's far too many people like finding out how corrupt the system is and looking at the solutions to it. And one of the other many films that I've been watching lately of you was an old one called Delusions.
Oh, yeah. It's not that old.
It's a couple of years old, isn't it?
Oh, I mentioned the new book in it, so it's not that old.
But at the start of it, you say jokingly, because your microphone goes out, you say, I guess there's no need to ask if there's any federal agents in the audience. And, but the question is, like, have you ever had any experience or weird things with maybe government agents because of what you do?
Well, I've been attacked a few times, and they were minor, very, very minor. Practicing law without a license, stuff like that. And I had that defeated. I have had the IRS attack me. Some people I was working with, we had that back off. But I really, I think it's hard to explain exactly why. I can only speculate as to why they don't attack me. I mean, I have been screamed at by IRS agents when they were throwing me out of a federal building that they were coming after me next. We have had situations where, not so much because of me, but because of the client, we had FBI agents, pretend to be cab drivers. But nothing too serious. I'm kind of boring that way. I know that our No State Project chat, because of one of the people I was working with, we did get confirmation that they were monitoring the U.S. Attorney's Office. Whether they're doing it now or not, we don't know. I would just imagine that we're under constant surveillance. You guys are in England. It's more of a surveillance state there than even over here. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. I think if people are doing activism, or seem to be activism, as they would put it, on any level, especially when people are doing it with some kind of serious effect to the system, like when you're looking at the rules and the legal system, then you're really taking it apart.
Well, I'm not. All I'm doing is using their system against them in that I'm taking their public relations, the accusations, and we're just feeding it back in the form of a question. I see more of the problem where when if there was to really be an issue where I don't know. I'm kind of boring this way, guys. I don't see that because everything is so decentralized and all the information is on my website. It's not as if I'm some kind of leader and I act, and I talk about not doing that. I just don't see me as being a problem. I think if more and more people start doing this, I don't see how they can. It's activism in a way that is completely nonviolent and is only making, and any kind of resistance from them just makes them look bad. It makes them look worse. So by ignoring questions of evidence and jurisdiction, it just makes them look even worse. And so I don't see how how they can have really effective retaliation, because you're just bringing more heat on and more challenges. So if they were to go after me, it would just be an opportunity for me to publicly embarrass them or show I guess I'm not doing too good a job of explaining this, and I apologize for that, because I've been threatened many times, just nothing's followed through. I just don't think that, at least at this point, I'm any kind of real threat, because it's so decentralized and it's so easy for anyone to just pick up the book or listen to the archives of the show and just ask questions. I mean, you're just asking questions. So at least at this point, I don't see any point in any kind of attack against me or some of the people I work with.
Okay, and what is a voluntaryist?
Oh, they're the worst sort.
I'm not very good with these isms.
Well, the only reason why I don't remember who actually coined the phrase. I think the reason why it was coined was because the word anarchy or anarchist is got such a negative connotation in the last 100, 200 years that it instead of the actual word, the root being no political ruler, basically, let's say a state of nature, no government. Voluntarist has not been corrupted yet, and I don't think it could be corrupted at least as easy as anarchy is. We're just normal people. Everyone is a voluntarist. They just haven't admitted it yet. Or they're not aware of it yet, because every voluntarist is just people who believe that the initiation of physical violence or physical force or aggression is wrong, that all human interaction should be voluntary or not at all. So it's a fairly simple, and that's it. That's the entire philosophy. All human interaction should be voluntary. That's it. And if you ask anybody, even a self-professed communist, or one of these Labor Department, Labor MPs, if you ask them, do you believe for yourself that it's okay for other people to use aggression and violence against you to get you to pay for services you may or may not want? They'll say, well, no, of course not. Well, congratulations, you're a voluntarist. Because the idea that you can say that somebody else is okay with violence is completely erroneous and has no merit to it, because you have no business talking on someone else's behalf, even though you consider yourself a member of parliament.
Well, that's the thing. This system is not got a lot of. It's not run by voluntarists. It's run by psychopaths, as you say. And that seems to be the problem, is the ones that make the rules up and control everybody else, the real sickos out there.
Yeah, John Lennon had it right. The world is run by the insane for insane purposes, I believe, is a fairly accurate quote of that, and he's right. It's very easy to diagnose any or point out that politicians and bureaucrats fall into the behavioral traits or character flaws, if of a psychopath, and that is a callous disregard for others. Basically a lack of empathy. It's pathological lying, where almost every word that comes out of their mouth is a lie, and they lie even when it even suits no real purpose. And it's also the massive ego. So those three are a very common trait with bureaucrats and psychopaths. It's part of the antisocial personality or borderline personality. You also have the inability to cope. where they do not like to be questioned, which of course comes from the grandiose view of themselves. And I can tell you, I mean, even this morning, the guy, the idea, the common meme that Canadians are so polite that's just a generalization. When you get with the government people, not so much. Like the guy I spoke with this morning, Brian, they do not tolerate questioning their position very well. It's a hallmark of the psychopath. And anyone can get on the phone and call a psychopath or bureaucrat. If you want to know if the mayor or someone like that or the local MP is a psychopath, call them up and ask them if there's evidence that the acts of Parliament actually apply to you. Hold them strictly to evidence. And you will find that they will not tolerate the situation very well and hang up or and probably use some filthy language with you.
I think most politicians will probably hang up on you if you call up and ask what statutes and acts actually apply to you.
Well, you want to keep it in general. Just say the acts, because they'll say to me, "Well, Mark, what do you mean by code?" And I because a lot of times the statute, the body of statutes in the United States is called a code. So, like the United States Code, and so I just use it as a general term. I think if anyone is interested in doing this, that's great. I use code as a general because I'm not interested in one particular part of the code. I'm interested in what makes you think the acts of Parliament, that what Parliament says applies to me in any way. So stick to the general that way. It doesn't matter one particular statute. What makes you think that Parliament's will or opinions apply to me at all? They'll say, well, Mark, why do you keep bringing the Constitution in? Isn't the Constitution the basis of your jurisdiction? Well, yes. Okay. That's why. If you're not qualified to talk to me about the application of the Constitution, you're not qualified to say you have jurisdiction over me.
Okay. And we've only got a couple of minutes left with you before we bring Vinny in, and then we're going to be taking calls from anyone in the chat or anyone listening. But there's another thing you say is be like a child. And the thing is, people try and insult you and say, grow up, stop being like a child. And the thing is, I think we should all be more childlike. And why is that?
Well, I think it's because children tend not to have a lot of conditioning. They're questioning and they don't accept things as easy as most adults do. And we want to, look, we're voluntarists, we're normal, bright, intelligent adults, and we're just not violent. And we don't want to come across. We don't want people thinking that we're bad people or he's just a bomb-throwing anarchist. No, we're against that. And when we're engaging with these people, they're going to be taking notes just like I am. And just like with a police officer who's going to take notes on the back of that ticket, you want to always come across as the type of person you really are. And that is, a respectful, empathetic, man or woman. And that you care for your fellow man, which is why you are a voluntarist, which is why you're challenging these things. And because if you get into activism, things like this, and you're berating cops and yelling and screaming, it's not going to help you. It's not the kind of world that I want to live in. It's not the type of people I want to be around. So I believe what Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's what we're doing. We're just be more consistent with our own principles. And that includes, of course, treating people the way we want to be treated. So if we want others to treat us with kindness and respect and empathy, we have to be extending that to everyone else.
Okay, Mark, would you like to give people websites and any last information? Are you staying on for another hour or are you getting off?
I have appointments I got to get to. I have some psychopaths that I need to call back. So I wish I could spend more time, especially since you're having Vin on. But I will have to go.
Okay, if you'd like to give people last bit of info, websites, all the rest of it. And after that, we're going to roll into a tune and then we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, guys. I really do. My website is Marc Stevens. Yeah, it's marcstevens.net. The radio show is every Saturday from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time. I forget what that is, GMT time. But Vin does replay the show the next day. And I think that's before he does the No State Project UK. And anyone who's a skeptic, which I invite and encourage skeptics. If anything that I said you think is BS and you've got facts to show the opposite, you're always welcome on the show. We encourage dissent. That's how we learn more.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Mark. I hopefully we're going to roll into a tune.
You're listening to Darkcity Radio Live, and this is your host Dawn from the Darkcity crew. Tune in at www.darkcityradio.com. You can find us by searching Darkcity Radio on Facebook or Twitter.
So we're back. Right, now we're here for the second hour, and we've just had Marc Stevens. What a great guest, and we've got his UK sidekick, I'm going to say for now, because I'm not very good with labels myself, but hi, Vin James.
Hello there, Dom, all right, mate? Yeah, it was a great interview you had with him.
Yeah, I've liked Mark's work for some time, and it's an absolute pleasure to get him and yourself on the show to talk about the procedure and the process that the No State Project sort of like lays out for people to use if they wish to play in legal land. But we've got a caller straight in. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, my name is Diana. Okay. And I would appreciate any tips these gentlemen could give me in relation to a court case that I've been dealing with, for the last 6 months. I thought I hold a record for the number of judges that I've been before. I think I'm coming up to number 7 now. I'm a layman. I didn't know much, and I really didn't understand the process in the court. And it's very simple. I really wanted the gentleman to be able to see that what I had brought before them was factual. I was producing evidence, and they just ignored me. And they basically decided that my case didn't have merit. I'm not at the point where we're going for a judicial review. About 2 weeks ago, I put in my application, and that was denied. Hello?
You're still here?
Oh, sorry, I thought I'd lost you then. I'm about to go to court again on the 22nd of this month. So on this occasion, I would like to be a little bit more prepared because I haven't been on the previous occasions.
Okay, Vinny, do you want to take that off?
Hello, Diana. All right. What is it actually regarding? What's it in relation to?
Okay, right. Basically, about 2 years ago, I signed a contract, a tenancy agreement with an organization on the basis that I was renting property from them, and they were my landlords. And about 8 months ago, I discovered that that wasn't the facts. I was actually living in almshouses, but they withheld the information from me. When I discovered this, I challenged them on it, and I wanted to know why I was handing over sums of money to them, on what basis. And basically, to cut a long story short, I decided I wasn't going to give them any more money until the situation was resolved. In my absence, they went to court. It was found in their favor. They got a possession order. I have been trying to defend that, producing evidence, and each judge after the first judge has just ignored the evidence because I wasn't there. And it resulted in me being strong-armed by armed policemen out of the property on the 5th of last month. So now I'm at the stage where I'm going for a judicial review. On the 18th of February, I put in my application. It was denied. So now I have to go through the process again, and I have a hearing on the 22nd of this month. So what I'm looking for are pointers as to what I should be focusing on this occasion to ensure I do have the evidence that demonstrates clearly that this organization did not have the authority to issue these tenancy agreements, that the documents were void. It basically came down to these people selling shares in a non-existent gold mine. So I was trying to get over to the judge why they should allow me the opportunity of a judicial review.
So have you actually put the judicial review paperwork in yet then?
It's already gone in. I did it a few weeks ago. They said the judge, I think, must have had a liquid lunch because I couldn't understand what he was saying. And basically, they think I'm going on a belief. I'm not. I'm going on facts. And all I basically need the judge to do is allow me the opportunity to go through judicial review. Because the first hearing, I wasn't there. And every successive attempt I've made since then, it's been in my absence. And they've basically ignored me.
Okay. I mean, this sounds a little bit like the freeman stuff you've tried using against them, No,
I didn't. I don't know anything about the freeman stuff. I basically went to court and I produced the evidence, which is I live in an almshouse. These properties have always been almshouses, and there will always be. This organization was given the task of management, but for whatever reason, they decided to ignore that fact, withhold the information from the occupants, and start issuing tenancy agreements. They do not have the authority to do that. when I discovered
to back this up.
Yes, I've got evidence to support that. When I discovered that, I challenged him on this. But to date, it hasn't gone quite according to plan.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so I'm trying to think, what is it that I'm doing wrong? How can I get through to these judges? What do I need to get them to focus on?
And can I have a summary of this? What is the actual charge, and what was the outcome of that for you to go for a judicial review?
Basically, the reason we're going for a judicial review is because the first judge did not have all of the facts pertaining to the case. He simply went on the basis that someone pitched up with what he presumed was a lawful contract. I wasn't there, so they're awarded in their absence.
Okay, so all the facts wasn't there, but like, what was the actual charge for that case? Why was it brought to court?
Well, this wouldn't have been a charge. This would have been civil, I take it, yeah?
This was a civil matter, basically. They were going on the basis that I was a tenant of theirs and I owed them rent. And my argument was I have never been a tenant. Well, you may have purported that I was a tenant, but the facts are, it now turns out that I'm actually a beneficiary of a trust, and you withheld that information, and you induced me into a contract that wasn't valid.
Is this along the lines of the Dane Clifford stuff? Is that what you're sort of using?
I don't know who that person is.
No? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know anything about the freeman stuff. I was simply going on the rights and the wrongs of the situation, which is you led me to believe I was renting a property from you. It now transpires that I was never renting a property from you. There's been a bit of deception, basically, going on here. Mm-hmm. You've been aware that these are almshouses, that they're beneficiaries and living in these almshouses. You've been given the task of managing them. But for whatever reason, you have decided to circumvent the original intent and go down a different route.
So who is the company you're actually meant to be renting them from then? If that's the case.
Well, the companies and these properties, for whatever reason, were given to a housing association to manage them. Right. So they have ignored the Charities Act. They have ignored the governing documents, and they've decided that we're going to operate them as rented property, but we're not going to tell them. We'll just let them go along with the belief that they're actually tenants living in rented accommodation. We don't have the authority to do that, but they don't know that, and that's what it came down to.
Is, because like the people that are taking you to court have got you to do a switcheroo and sign some documents when you've originally had an agreement with somebody else. Is that correct?
What they have done is they've got me to enter into an agreement. The beneficiaries and the trustees have been absent from these properties for about the custodians and trustees have been absent for about 7 years. So me arriving on the scene, I wouldn't have known that. I just knew that there was a property there to be rented, and these people were offering me the opportunity to rent it. So I took it. But
it's misrepresentation under the contract.
Well, it is.
And I mean, if you've been using statutory evidence against them, the reason they ignore that is they couldn't care less what you have to say the law says.
No. Anything comes into that, I think.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter.
With Marc Stevens, what he says is it's not your opinion that counts. It's theirs. Only theirs. So that's right. So the moment you start, sorry.
Right. So it's not about me. It's about them. So I'm at the point now where I'm focusing on you need to furnish me with the evidence that gave you the authority to turn these almshouses into rented property.
Okay.
So I need to.
You're challenging this on the grounds that there isn't a valid contract.
There isn't.
So one of the factual points that you can challenge him on regarding that, or ask them to present evidence of, you're gonna. So the problem is with this is you're taking on a burden of proof yourself, and that becomes very difficult. The way we generally use the system back against them is we never take on a burden of proof ourselves. We always.
Well, that was my original mistake. So now I've learned from that. I'm no longer going down the line producing the burden of proof. I'm putting it back into their court. You have dragged me here. You're saying that I'm a tenant. You're saying you have the lawful right to issue this document. Simply provide me with the proof.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the points you can challenge him on regarding the contracts is to prove whether, after facts, proving whether there was a meeting of the minds or not.
No, there wasn't, because I had no idea what was going on.
Put the burden on them and ask them for facts to prove there was, or on the on the other side. But the thing is now you're going to a judicial review. You're the one bringing the claims. Now certain proofs do lie with you.
Well, I do have the proof. I actually have the governing document.
That's fair enough. But then at the end of the day, it's because you've gone in front of seven judges now. You claim this will be the eighth.
No, but what seems to have happened is the first judge made a decision. I appealed that. I did actually go before a judge, and he read the paperwork. He didn't read the paperwork, and he simply said he wasn't prepared to act on the matter because being at a funeral was no excuse for not attending court. I'd made payments in the past, and that constituted a contract, and that the judge who gave the original ruling was quite learned, and that was it. And he didn't want to hear anything else. So when I tried to appeal against that, I also tried to bring the custodians in, that judge decided that he wasn't going to go against what... It seems that they've been all going on assumptions. No one has been prepared to look at the matter. They've been going on the basis, well, he looked at it, he said this, so... well, I'm just going to bat it back. No one has been prepared to look at it. It's almost like a little gang. And they refuse to, go back and say, well, perhaps we should have looked at it this way, or perhaps we didn't have the information. They just won't. It's like they've just kind of like colluded together not to look at the evidence. And I have produced the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, if this goes to the High Court, which is going to, if you're taking this to a judicial review, they may well give it a lot more time. It depends how many pages you've thrown in front of them. The rule we try to stick to when we put a judicial review in front of the High Court is to keep it to less than 10 pages. Or
less
no more than 10 pages.
No more than 10 pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because especially if you challenge them. Sorry?
I'm going to have to just stick to the salient points on this occasion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing is, you've got to remember, if you want them to read certain... I mean, fair enough, if it's a big, complicated case and there's a lot of issues, you can't but not put that amount of evidence in. But the problem is that you've got to remember, they read a lot of cases all the time, and if you really wanted to see the evidence and see the evidence that matters, you've got to use the most cases you can, but try not to overwhelm them, because they'll just skip over the evidence and won't give it a proper read and won't review it properly.
Well, I think that's what's been happening, because the evidence, the evidence and the arguments have been put together with minds more learned than mine, and for whatever reason they've decided not to look at it. I don't know why, but it could be that it might have been 30 pages. It was Friday afternoon. He never wanted to get off home.
Prash is saying all you have to do is get them to admit the contract's void, but that's the thing. They
won't admit it's void, but you have to put them in a position where they can't produce evidence proving that it's a valid contract. Therefore, the fact not appearing is presumed not to exist. So now, what I wanted to
ask Diane was, Diana, have you got a barrister or a brief or solicitor, etc., on this case?
Not at the moment. No, I haven't. That was the issue. I just couldn't find anyone in the short space of time, because I really didn't think it would go this far, to take the matter on. But I am getting some assistance now. And I'm hoping that will put an end to it, because obviously I wasn't very clued up when I went into the court on
I'm not too sure about that. You seem more than clued up on law and the legal system than your average layman.
Well, since this started, I have spent the entire December, January, February, March learning. I have, because basically it was a case of having to, and I've had to learn very fast and very quickly. So it was very useful listening to your radio show to understand that where I may have been going wrong is I had taken on the burden of proof, and I was going down the case of this is right, this is wrong. And when all the time I should have been looking at contract, and I should have made that. I didn't actually find out until perhaps, the end of January. Factually, I didn't actually get hold of the documentation until then. So previously I was going armed with evidence that I had gleaned from the Almshouse Association, their website, demonstrating why almshouses are not and will never be used for rental purposes. That is not the original intent, and that's not the purpose of an almshouse. So for someone to come along and try to change the nature of things, and I couldn't get the custodians or trustees. I couldn't get their support because they were colluding, I would say, with this organization because they appointed them. So for someone to not know something for a short while, a couple of months, and a cock-up to have occurred, I could accept that, but not for it to go on for 7 years. And this is how long this has been going on.
I think you've done extremely well, and this goes to prove my point that people are going to look deeper into this deceptive legal system more when they truly get harmed by it. And there's a lot of times when people contact myself and say, oh, I've got a court case coming up on Tuesday. And it's like, well, you know what I mean? You've known me for some time. You should be looking into this stuff yourself. And where you've been thrown in the deep end and it's happening all around you, you've had to look into it. You said you needed to. This is like affecting your life.
I needed to find out where I was going wrong. Even though I always I've naively believed that I would go to court. I've never lost in a court before, and on this occasion I believe I would go in there, I would present the evidence, and the judge would listen. But he didn't. In fact, He was rather aggressive, very rude, and I'm quite sure that he might have needed medication by his behavior. And it was a case of, it's my court, I can do what I want, I don't have to listen to you. The only thing he didn't do was stick his fingers in his ears and laugh. And then, because he was a deputy district judge, he didn't know what I was talking about. So then it went to a circuit judge, and the circuit judge decided that his friend, had acted appropriately. And it just seemed to have been a case of each one backing the other, no one being prepared to step forward and say, wait a minute, let me take a look at the evidence. So that's what I've been up against. So now I have nothing to lose. They've got the property back. I'm trying to find somewhere to live. So this time I'm going, and I'm not leaving that courtroom until the points of the facts, not points, facts. I'm no longer interested in the word belief, facts. And I think they assume that I've been going on a belief. I'm not. I'm going on facts. I don't want to hear anything else about the facts. And I want a clear demonstration. They can end this now simply by producing the evidence that says they have the authority to change these properties from their original course to what they wanted them to be. And that's all I need to see, and that's all I need to present to the judge. And I've actually did something which was called, I think I've done a bit of research, and I think it's actually now called a record of the private parties, where I asked them certain questions, 4 pointed questions in relation to this, and if I didn't get a reply from them, it would then be a case of that they agreed that they didn't have authority to do what they had done, and that there was no debt. So that's been hanging around since the beginning of November. They acknowledged receipt of it, but they never responded. So I guess I might be able to use that if we get to a hearing. But right now my focus is how to get that judge to listen to what I'm saying.
Well, you can't force them to listen. All you can get them to do is if they get them put themselves in a position where they're making certain statements and they start contradicting themselves, that's what you can use against them to show that they're not giving you a fair hearing and not giving you a fair crack of the whip. I mean, during your first hearing, when you got taken to court by the other party, the other claimant,
I wasn't there.
They bring up...
I wasn't there.
Okay,
I was at the funeral.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I take it you had paperwork coming through saying, this decision's been made against you.
Mm-hmm.
Blah,
and
blah,
then what
blah,
I did was I went to court to appeal that judgment.
Okay.
And this is the that I saw.
The thing I was going to ask is, did they actually is there anything in that paper where they quote any statutes at all?
No.
Where they claim under the, Credit Consumer Act or whatever contract act?
No. In fact, what actually happened was I wasn't aware of this until afterwards because I didn't, for whatever reasons, I never actually had a copy of the contract. I just saw it. So when I was in court on that one occasion and I saw what was produced, what they had done, because they were asked certain questions about whether the contract, was pursuant to certain acts and it included everything. What they had done was they tampered.
Right. Sorry, so you don't even have a copy of the contract?
I do now. I managed to get hold of a copy of it.
Is there anything on there that states some kind of statute or act?
No. I think there is, but I don't think there actually is.
It's important if there's one on there, look for it. If it's there, that's what they have to use against you in court. And it comes down to this: what facts are there that they ever brought to prove that act was applicable to you, therefore giving that court jurisdiction over you
Right.
to make the decision they did. So that's something you can bring up. I'll say, so you haven't put that into your your High Court appeal, obviously the judicial review, but obviously it is an issue that you can bring up in court if the judges are listen to what you've got to say. So these are points you can raise, and like I say, if it turns, a judge may turn around and say under this certain act, we can do this or do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you snap back with, well, fair enough, okay, well, what facts do you rely on to prove that that's applicable to me?
Right. Okay.
Diana, will you keep in contact with the show? Because we've got other callers coming in as well, and keep us updated with what's going on that. And
if you add me as a contact, Diana, we can get together in the week and next week, and I'll help you out as best I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Brilliant,
okay,
Diana.
No
okay, thanks.
On the line, we've got somebody called SKYPE Man. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. So what issues do you have?
Well, I'm taking the train fare company to court, basically. So I'll tell you a bit of the story. So I obviously work in London, and every day, I buy a weekly travel card. And then on the day that I was travelling, I basically forgot to put the weekly travel card in my pocket. And then they kind of collared me at London Bridge. And then they basically just tried to issue me with a fine, which I wasn't going to sign, because obviously you're admitting guilt if you sign their fine form, basically. But the guy just told me, he said, "Oh, it's a different section. It just means all you have to do is send in your weekly travel card, and then they'll just cancel it and give you the money back." So that's what, on the assumption that I did that. And then they sent me a letter saying there's a £40 fine. So I sent my weekly travel card back, along with the other travel card, and basically said I want a refund for the £8.50 extra travel card I had to pay for that day. And then they basically just kind of completely ignored it and said, "Oh no, and send us your photo ID because otherwise it's not valid." And then I sent my photo ID with the weekly travel card and the extra travel card I bought. And then they said, "Sorry, you've run out of time now. Now it's a £40 fine." What the hell? So I thought, well, I don't really care. So I basically, I've put a claim in against them. I had to send them a further 2 extra letters to try and resolve the situation, which I'm trying to charge them £100 for each letter I had to send, and also damages of £1,000 as well for me having to take them to court. So I just kind of thought I'd call in if there's any kind of... I've never been to court before.
Okay, so are you having to go to court on this yourself now?
Well, I'm taking them to court for damages to get back the money I paid for the travel card. Charging them £100 for each extra letter I send to them.
But is there what I mean is there a case outstanding for the actual fine that they imposed upon your name, or what you think is your name?
Well, what I did was I thought, okay, well, I'll just pay that and then I'll take them to court and I'll get it back, basically, because obviously if I don't pay it, they're going to start trying to do other things, and I couldn't be bothered with the hassle. So as a kind of statement of I don't agree with what they've done, I thought I'll pay the fine and then I'll take them to court, and I want to get £100 for each letter, and I want damages as well, basically.
Okay, brilliant. So where have you been looking at this information and this sort of process out of interest?
I've been looking at all the freeman stuff for quite a while now, for the past kind of couple of years. I mean, I haven't researched it probably as much as everybody else has, but I understand the fact that if you're signing your penalty fare, that you're agreeing to guilt, you're agreeing that you're guilty. But I kind of signed that under the pretext of basically that I would be able to send back this ticket and everything will be sorted out. So what they've done is they dragged out the whole situation and caused me a lot of grief, and I had to write these extra letters. And
you didn't have to write extra letters. This is the thing, right? You didn't have to sign anything. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
Anything you sign, you're truly showing life to a contract, and you know, what I mean, it doesn't matter if you sign under duress or anything like that, but you didn't sign anything. So when they sent you all this stuff saying, right, you owe us this amount of money, well, the burden of proof is upon them. They have to prove their claims to you, and then they've got none. They've got no signature, no nothing. And then if it did go to court, you could have like asked them to prove their claims, and if necessary, you've even got evidence of your own travel card that you got weekly. But that's neither here nor there. But what you're doing on top of that, this is the way I see the legal system, is now you're creating conflict and attacking that system. And the only thing that you can do by attacking that system, truly, is give it energy. So when you notice this corruption, this is the sick craziness of it all. You recognise this corruption, you want to do something about it, and you're trying to copy their process and their system and doing the same to their system within their system when it only feeds that system. There's a lot simpler remedies to life and the legal system than like attacking it, in my opinion, anyway. But from Vin, what's your sort of like stance on what this man's done in his process?
I'll be honest with you, mate. I don't think you stand a chance. The judge will just laugh it out of court, really.
Really?
If he was maybe asking £25 a letter, and maybe asking for 250, maybe even £500 at the most in cost, then you might have something that the judge is prepared to listen to and maybe give the time of day to as such. But it just sounds like you're being greedy, really. And
he's still
the
not
moment
win
if you're going to
there.
start using the freeman stuff, that's going to be a red flag to them, and they'll just dismiss it straight away out of hand anyway, whether your case has got merit or not. And the thing is, I mean, you've paid it now. All you can actually do is just lay out the circumstances to the judge about what happened. About basically it wasn't a fair and a just fine that you was forced to pay. You can turn around and claim that you was forced to pay it under duress.
Yeah.
What stage are you at with your claim at the moment?
I'm going to be going to court. I've got a date for May to go. So that's just I mean I sent the claim in and paid I think it was 30 quid or something, and then they sent in their defence, which was quite hilarious because they just kind of some guy just randomly just basically wrote down a load of acts and everything like that. Didn't sign it, referred to some other person that isn't me in there and everything. And I just basically asked them to strike it out and because it's completely irrelevant because he's talking about someone else. So I thought that was quite funny.
See, you said earlier that you've got no previous court experience?
No, I haven't, no, but I've always thought it'd be quite fun to take some...
Do you know what, mate? You're doing it exactly the right way. What Mark was saying earlier on the show, do it with something small and absolutely pathetic that's not really going to injure your life too harshly. And you're getting that practice on the field because... If you look at it like a game of snooker, you can watch snooker on telly, you can read about it in books, you can follow people, but you're not going to get a 1-4-7 break the first time you get on the table.
Yeah.
Now, when you've got up on the table a few times and played the game and everything else, you might not even ever get a 1-4-7 break, but at least you're going to pot a few balls, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to learn about all of it, and I've never been in the court before, and I'm quite keen to see how it all works and everything. But at the end of the day, he's just basically filling in a form, spieling off all these statutes and acts. I mean, the thing that the issue I've got with it as well is that they try and attempt to turn it into a criminal act. So they basically threaten people with a criminal record and it being a criminal offence if you don't pay their fine. So this corporation has basically got the power to create a criminal act out of thin air, even though I'm not guilty of the offence at all. So at the same time, they have a limitation on how long you can take to appeal against a decision, which I'm under the belief that if it's a criminal, if they're trying to accuse me of a criminal offence, the appeal process to that isn't limited to like 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So that's my whole kind of issue with the thing as well. Is if I didn't pay it within 2 weeks, they would try and say that I'm now committing a criminal offence. I mean, even though I had a ticket, fair enough, I didn't have it with me. I left it at home, but I did actually have a valid ticket for that day. So, and that's why I sent them in the letter, and it should have just been done and dusted. But they just, just tried to pursue the whole thing. And it's just
if you're going to look at how to like take them to court procedure and things like that, and it sounds like you're doing a good job as it is. But do you look at the government website much at all?
I do, yeah. I check out a lot of the statutes and acts on there and read that quite often. He did put quite a few statutes and acts on his defence that he sent in. But, at the end of the day, I think that they're completely irrelevant because he's accusing me of a criminal offence, and the whole kind of issue that I've got is that you can't accuse me of a criminal offence using your statutes and acts because, they're completely irrelevant. That's what I said. I said, your statutes and acts are completely irrelevant. You're trying to accuse me of committing a criminal offence. So,
Well, I mean, that's the thing. The way to look at it is they can accuse you, but they can't prove it. It's another thing.
Yeah.
You can accuse somebody of committing anything you like, but it's proving it. That's the point, which they never got to do because you paid the fine anyway.
Yeah, I suppose.
So you're in a tricky situation. I don't know what way it'll go for you. I mean, I hope it does. You do end up in front of a nice. I'll take this. This will be going to the county court, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it just depends on what sort of judge you're in front of on the day. What side of the bed they got up from. That's often how these things tend to go. As long as you can try and put it across it in a sensible and reasonable way.
Yeah.
I may give it time of day, but I think the amount of money you're trying to get is a little excessive, and it'd just be seen as greedy.
Yeah, probably.
So that's where it may go against you. It's not the fact that you haven't got a meritless case. You've got some value to it, but it's just it's the money issues. That's what they look at.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
And you've got to remember, if you do go through with this, the other side could hit you with costs as well.
Yeah. I mean,
so if you lose, you could end up having to pay a couple of £100 or so for their solicitor for the day.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was a point of calling me a criminal for something I haven't done, and I paid it under duress at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to pay it, and I couldn't be bothered with the hassle of it. So at the end of the day, I was basically thinking that if I pay something like that, even though I'm not guilty, because I'm forced to pay it under the threat of criminal prosecution and other things like that I can get remedy at the end of the day afterwards. Being able within my leisure to prove the fact that I'm not guilty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, good luck with it, but I tend to stay away from those sorts of things. The thing is that because with what I've learned to do through the No State Project group is that we've realised the courts are so corrupt, you can't then go back and try and use them yourself.
Right.
So that's the thing. You can't have it both ways a lot of the time. It's very difficult. The fact is, once you realise just how corrupt the system is, you realise there's nothing there they can give you. There's no service that they can offer you that's fair or just.
And you must have heard the old phrase, by the consent of the governed.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
But like what Vin says, I've picked this up off of somebody else via somebody. They told me that you say, Vin, if it's done by the consent of the governed, then who are the police and the magistrates and all these judges? They're the governed, so it's by the consent of them, is it not?
It could be looked at that way, yeah. Either way, it's a flawed concept when you use that term. It's not even grammatically correct. I mean, but like I say, it could be used in that context where they say consent of the governed. Well, if they're meant to be our representatives, that creates a agent-principal relationship. Therefore, we're meant to be the principal because they're meant to be our servants. That makes them the agent. Therefore, they're the ones who are governed. So it's the consent of the governed. So it's their consent that gives the force of law over us, not our consent, because we've given them the job. So it could be interpreted that way. But it's still ridiculous because there is no agent-principal relationship there. That's the point I was making when I said that. And even if you're going to ignore that version of it and just go with consent of the governed, well, the word governed means controlled. So the consent of the controlled. If you control a group of people, why the hell do you require their consent? The two don't go hand in hand.
Mark was talking earlier about a case that you've been dealing with in Sheffield. Do you want to run us through that again?
Well, yeah, that's Paul. I've been helping him out as well. It's over a speed camera ticket. And basically we've been calling the police up, and so is Mark on his behalf, and just basically been asking just asking questions for evidence that they've got, facts proving that the law's applicable and other such evidence. Mark's had some really good conversations with him. I think I've made one or two myself, possibly, if I remember right. And it's the same thing that the Mark uses over in the States when he's helping people out over there, where we're asking the same questions. It's just obviously the difference is that there's very little difference really. It's just that obviously this is under the Crown, whereas in America it's under they call it the state is the plaintiff, whereas over here they're calling the Crown the claimant. It changed from plaintiff to claimant over here. Just a few of the words got changed in terms of the terminology that gets used now. Hello, still there? Sounds like cut off.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much the size of it. These people write all these rules out, but
he's got his hearing coming up next week, and I'm going up with him to act as a Mackenzie friend. And I've got two that I'm going to tomorrow. One in the morning and one later in the day I'm going to. So I've got two cases I'm going to help out on tomorrow.
So you have been very, very busy doing this. This is taking up most of your time, I gather.
It is now, yeah. I mean, I'm not working at the moment anyway, so thankfully I've got the time to help people out on this stuff. So I don't mind turning up and helping them out in cases and that. One of them's an appeal hearing, and the other two, Paul's going to be a trial now because he's already been for his plea hearing, and the one that I'm going to in the morning's a plea hearing for someone else. So it's taken up a lot of my time this week. It's been bonkers for me. So
what do you try and do? You try and get it quashed as early as possible, so you don't really want it to go to trial, do you?
Well, we try. It's sort of we have a twofold way of trying to deal with it. It's either if we can get them in a position where they've hung themselves enough where they'll just drop it at the trial or even the pre-trial stage. That's ideally what we want. But we understand that because we know how corrupt the courts are, and all of this is predetermined anyway. They don't view you as innocent. You've been accused, therefore you're guilty. That's it. But we use that against them because we know how these people are going to behave. We can 99% of the time predict their behaviour, how they're going to react, and how they're going to treat us. So
what you're doing, is it much the same as Marc Stevens acting as a power of attorney?
Well, I mean, I'll do the same as what Mark does. I mean, I help people out on the phone. We make phone calls, be it the HMRC, the equivalent to the IRS, or the councils when I'm helping people out with council tax things. So I'll do the same as Mark. We call them up, and then sometimes, occasionally, they'll ask, are you acting on behalf of this person, and is it okay to talk in front of them, regarding personal matters like this, and they say yes, that's fine. So I don't put myself. I don't claim that I'm legally qualified. I don't claim that I'm acting as a legal representative for them. I'm just simply asking questions on their behalf, and helping them out as a lay advisor. So we put it across that way. But when I've gone to court, so far I've acted as Mackenzie friends for people. I haven't yet got to a case yet where we've managed to. Well, actually, I've not even asked. We're going to try tomorrow because the chap that I'm actually helping out is partly dyslexic. So even though I'm going to be helping him, he might not be able to read everything I'm putting in front of him. So it's going to mean it could be a little more awkward because he has to stop and actually ask me, and I have to tell him what to say, sort of thing. So what we're going to put to him is the fact that because he does suffer from this condition, it's only mild, it's not serious, but it could. It may help the court, help speed things up if I can actually ask these questions on his behalf.
Well, am I right in saying that a Mackenzie friend can speak to the defendant but cannot address the bench?
Can't address the court, yes, but it's still that is at the discretion of the court. So we're going to give this a try tomorrow and see if they'll let me speak on it. I won't be speaking on his behalf, but I'll be asking the questions on his behalf, the questions we've already pre-prepared, and we'll make that clear to the court and it's to see if they'll let me do it.
So you've already put forward this motion?
Not yet, no. Well, when we go there tomorrow, we'll mention this to the court. But I mean, when I've gone in and helped people in the past, I've briefly addressed the court and I've turned around and said, I'll be acting as a Mackenzie friend with this person.
And you do this before the case is like called or anything
it's
like that?
It's when they get called up, you'll be with them. And see, sometimes it depends on where you are inside the court. If you're sometimes you'll have a table in front of you. Sometimes they want to throw the people they're accusing inside one of those boxed rooms, the ones with the windows all around it. So you don't want them being thrown in there because obviously if you're acting with them, you can't stand in there with them. You need a table and you need to lay your paperwork out and things like that. So usually on occasions when that's happened and they state, go sit in there, I usually jump up and state, well, excuse me, if I can just address the court briefly. I'm acting as a Mackenzie friend for them. I'm going to ask if we can have that table over there in front of you, so we can lay our paperwork out, and I can help my friend. And that's usually when they go into their diatribe about, you're not allowed to address the court, you understand that, and all that stuff.
So at that point, the best way to put it is it okay if I address the bench at this point, and you ask them the questions and always put it across like that?
I don't use the word the bench. I don't know if that's something to do with the higher courts. The higher courts, that's generally how they refer to it. When you're in a magistrate's court, I've only actually heard that mentioned once in a recent case.
Yeah, it probably is best to say address the court.
Yeah. And that's generally what we do. But I mean, in terms of acting as an attorney, acting as similar to a solicitor for somebody, we've not got round to doing that yet. But it's at the discretion of the court. There is no actual hard and fast rule stating you can't do it yet. Just a lot of the time they won't allow you to do it if you're not a solicitor. They don't like you doing it if you're not a solicitor. So it's like I say, it just depends on the circumstances you might be in. And tomorrow I'm in a little bit of I wouldn't say totally unique situation, but I'm in a situation where we could use, the fact that he's said to me, he may have problems because he's got dyslexia.
Hello, is that Darkcity Radio?
Well, that was a bit random, straight in there. Go for it. Who's this? Hello.
Hello, is that Darkcity Radio? It's Freeman here.
Hello, mate.
Hello. Got a question?
I think I've got the radio on as well.
That's what it'll be. You've got an echo of it coming back. Turn the radio off and then come back in. We've also got Sudama with us.
Yeah, sorry, Spiky, man. We came into the conversation when you talked to us before, so hope you're still with us.
No worries.
Okay, mate.
Sorry for cutting.
That's all right. Right, have you turned the radio off? No. Do you want to put your mic on mute?
Yeah, sorry.
And sort your radio out, turn that off, and then come back to us. Sudama, are you there? If that's how you pronounce it, he is in there. But this man gave me it was a combination of two people for curing a tooth abscess or keeping it back or keeping it out of the way. I've been doing a teaspoon of turmeric in a glass of water every day, and that's been holding it right back. And after I brush my teeth, washing my mouth around with colloidal silver water, and it's near enough disappeared. So how to get rid of an abscess?
Wow.
Yeah, Sudama, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Tom.
Hello, mate. Did you have a question or a rant or whatever? And Weedman's back as well.
No, I'm just saying I'm glad that the turmeric helped. Especially with the pain. You know what pain is for abscess.
Yeah, it was brilliant, mate. Weedman, have you sorted your radio out?
Yeah, I've just sorted it out. Yeah, sorry about that.
Go on.
What it is, I understand what you mean by feeling threatened and violence by them. I mean, they haven't actually been violent physically to me, but we came in, they asserted that I'm a medical user of marijuana, and they just still went and slashed all my stuff, so then they took my medicine away. And I've read since that in general they don't prosecute; they're just trying to find me. And I've also read recently, where I've been reading up about it, that it says that they're not even supposed to take a medical user stash. So I'm kind of confused with what they've been doing.
So you're a medical user, but what they probably mean by a medical user is a registered medical user. Have you been registered?
Well, no, because it's only recently that they've started supplying cannabis oil on the NHS, which is through a product called Sativex. I'd looked to see if you could get a license, but it said that nobody really, they don't give anybody a license except for this one pharmaceutical company.
Well, they can't. Well, I don't know. This is worth looking into, worth a channel to look down on cannabis. But
there's nothing to stop you mentioning this to your doctor and just stating to your doctor, as far as you're concerned, now you're using medical marijuana for your condition. There's nothing to stop you telling your doctor that. It doesn't mean that you're, you've officially been registered as using it. But you could at least tell your doctor and state if ever the police ever ask for evidence from you, you're free to give that just that bit of information away.
Okay.
You get me? You could do that, and in that way you're covering yourself.
Well,
the doctors obviously, your information's personal, but you could turn around and state, you have my authorization. If ever the police want to ask for evidence showing that I have a medical condition and I'm using medical marijuana, you've got my permission to release that, at least just that bit of information to them. And in that way, you've got it on record with your doctor.
This is where it comes down to medicinal products and what the pharmaceutical industry does. You've got, let's take something that is not seen to be something that is seen as wacky-backy and hippies get high off, but like you've got white willow bark, which comes from a tree. You can take that off the tree, make a tincture, and that's exactly the same properties as what aspirin will have, and that will cure anything that aspirin would normally cure, or not cure. It just get rid of the pain or mask the pain as such and get rid of it. But it's a natural way of doing it. And this is it. All these remedies are there anyway. But when you've got things like in our time, what we're looking at are these high grade skunks, and you're making medicinal grade cannabis oil, which has been said or alleged to cure cancers and a number of other things. So what they're doing is that they know that this product sort of cures and holds things back and all kinds of things like that. So they want to put a patent on it and then synthesize it, and that's theirs. And that means that nobody else can do it, and then they will be able to market it, and then they won't care who's growing it because they will have control over the market. And this is where the registration of all these food types, medications and healthcare things, and even weed, it will be down to the people taking it. You'd have to register yourself to feel free to take it, and then you're not so free because you'd have to take the government shit. It's much like something a lot worse, or when you look at it, is the heroin trade, which is set up by the governments. They bring it into the country, they get millions of people addicted to it, and then they've got all these programs and medication, which is synthesized smack. You know what I mean? Methadone. They give that to people, which is really 10 times more harmful than heroin. It's heroin, you can get to be natural, and then methadone. But the only thing is, the methadone comes on a program where people take it step by step to come off of it, and it's all regulated under the government.
Is it not opium that's natural?
Yeah, opium is, yeah.
Synthesized from it, yeah.
Well, so the thing is, from what I understand about most drugs, is the fact that it isn't the actual drug itself that's harmful to people. It's the crap that it gets mixed up with. That's what's killing people. It's when it starts to get mixed up with baking powder and rat poison and stuff like that. That's what ruins people's health. That's why when you people who get accused of being drug addicts and smackheads, and they say, look at the state of them. It's not the actual drug itself that they're taking. It's the crap that's mixed in with it that's doing them harm and making them look in that state. And that's, that's the thing. That's what people have to realise. It's like the Leah Betts case years ago when that young girl died. They were blaming it on ecstasy, a dodgy ecstasy pill. It wasn't the ecstasy that actually killed her. It was the fact that she drank way too much water and she gave herself water on the brain, and that's what killed her. It wasn't the drug itself. I'm not advocating drugs, by the way. I'm not saying I was.
And the only reason that went in the media as well.
But that's the thing. They do twist and make the drug itself the problem when in fact it's not necessarily the actual chemical itself. There's other factors that prohibition. The reason we have a drug problem is prohibition. You've only got to look back to the early 1920s in America or whatever, with prohibition of alcohol. More people died of alcohol poisoning during prohibition than died in sort of the same time span when it was legalised. As such, prohibition's the problem, not the drug itself. As soon as you tell people they can't have it, what are they going to do?
Are you trying to say at the end of this show that the problem is rules and regulations?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we've only got 2 minutes left, so if there's anyone on the line that wants to add anything at the last minute, do so now. No. So it's been a great night. I've absolutely loved having Mark on and Vinny, and absolutely everybody else that's come in and put their 2 pence in. It's been a great show. Much love. And we've got Darkcity crew after the hour. We're going to roll into that, where I don't know if they're going to do call-ins tonight or just a group chat, but it's usually all wild fun and games. So keep tuned.